right, let's bring on the senior editor from Awful Announcing, Ben Axelrod, kind enough to join us on this Friday afternoon. Ben, happy Friday. How are you this afternoon?
Hey, I'm doing well. Happy Friday to you.
You bet, man. You been to any Coldplay concerts lately?
If I have been, don't tell my wife.
Okay. All right, we'll make sure we'll take care of you. I get so much stuff lined up here for you. So I'm gonna first of all, I want to go with the Luis Ortiz situation with the Guardians, and the MLB just sent a little thing down a couple hours ago. The Guardians forwarded it. He is going to be on paid leave through the end of August. To me, that means one of two things: either they're not quite sure they've got enough, so they want to check a little bit more, or they have so much that they need more time to go down every avenue of information. Do you think Luis has thrown his last pitch for a Cleveland Guardian?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I have trouble speculating just because this is one of the situations where if he did get caught with something, like a real ban could be in place. Like, it's not that crazy to think that this could be a really, really severe punishment, both in terms of his time with the Guardians and obviously his career. So I'm going to kind of hedge there. In terms of the options, though, I tend to think it would be the latter, just because, they've obviously looked into this to some degree, and they found enough that they want to keep it going. So I think if they were to look into it and there was nothing there, it would obviously be a pretty open and shut case. So, it makes sense. It's considering the allegations and considering the nature of the situation. That would have been a pretty quick investigation to just have it last through the All-Star break. So I think that probably gave them a natural point. But the fact that they're already going to take this thing all the way through August tells me that they have a lot they still need to work through. And then at that point, you also have to involve the players union,
right,
as far as whatever any potential punishments could come out of it. So I tend to think they still have a lot they need to look at here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I mean, I'm sure you've watched the videos that have been out there for several weeks about the couple of pitches that were in question in the betting movement and the money and the betting apps and everything. And I mean, on the surface, it doesn't look good, but you're right. I guess you gotta take it all the way through and see what happens from there. Let's go back to the All-Star break, if you will, the home run derby, the game, the swing off. How did everything come off to you from Atlanta? What was your take on the 2025 MLB All-Star activities?
Yeah, I think sports in general are kind of in a weird place with All-Star games. It seems like we have the same conversation every year about the Pro Bowl and certainly about the NBA All-Star game. I think baseball, maybe it's just because of the tradition and maybe because probably mostly because of the tradition. It does seem to be the one that people still value. It's at a part of the sports calendar where it's really the only thing going on. I know the home run derby was kind of polarizing, especially with Pat McAfee's involvement. But I thought I'd give baseball credit for at least trying something different and trying to bring a new audience to the sport. I thought the All-Star game itself, though, was great. I actually think the swing off worked in terms of adding a little bit of extra pizzazz to the game and to the event. So I don't have very many complaints about the All-Star game. I think, like I said, sports are kind of in a strange place where if an event doesn't have stakes, I don't know, there's probably a certain cap to just how much interest there is going to be in it, but I'll give baseball credit, and they obviously have the built-in benefit of having the calendar to themselves, but they are the one league that has seemed to keep theirs relevant over the years.
Ben, you've talked about, the other All-Star games. The NBA All-Star game is turned into an absolute joke. The NFL hasn't figured anything out for the last 15 or 20 years. You mentioned how you thought the baseball did a really nice job in Atlanta this year. For those that maybe have been away from the MLB All-Star game for a couple of years, and they happen to come upon this, do you think that was enough to maybe bring them back a little bit more and to check out more baseball and make that more appointment viewing and listening for them moving forward?
Yeah, I don't know how much the All Star game itself is going to attract a new audience. I think in general, we're probably at a point where the baseball All Star game is pretty limited to baseball fans. But I do think that, you only have what you have to work with. And so the fact that it did come off as well as it did, I do think is beneficial for the sport. And if there were any new fans who were tuning in, I think the game had a great energy. I think it does a great job of highlighting the game's younger stars. So from that standpoint, I do think it was a positive.
What was your take on some of the guys being mic'd up right in the middle of the game and getting that real raw audio emotion during the contest? What was your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think especially for a game that doesn't have stakes. I know they've tried that with some real games, and that has obviously had some pushback in the league because of the perceived distraction that it causes in games, and even with the manager interviews. I know some people don't like those, but I do think for the All Star game itself, it creates a fun environment, it creates a fun product, and ultimately, I think it's a net positive for the sport.
Is there anything you would do, that you would add, that you would delete to take it up another notch?
You it's tough to say because as much as you'd like to add some stakes, it was also kind of silly when when it was determining home field of the World Series and the championship
Right.
round. So, I don't know how much I would change. I think that, like I said, I think they're getting into a good place with the energy. You could always debate whether every team needs a representative, but if it doesn't have stakes, then I don't know how much it matters. So, yeah, I ultimately, I think I would just keep it as is.
Ben Axelrod is our guest. Check him out, senior editor at Awful Announcing on X, at Awful Announcing. Ben does a great job. So let's go back to the ESPYs Wednesday night. Did you watch, and what was your take on that? And how has that evolved or not evolved over the last several years?
I actually was a big fan of the ESPYs. I know that Shane Gillis's monologue was pretty polarizing, but I ultimately, I'm a big Shane Gillis fan,
Mhm.
so I enjoyed his monologue. I did think it created for somewhat of a disjointed experience, but ultimately, I was a big fan of the monologue, and ultimately, I think it was an entertaining product, which is really all you can ask for with an event like that.
Yeah, especially on that particular day where there really is absolutely nothing going on. It gets you a little closer to the start of baseball. I got to tell you, Ben, when the ESPYS first started, I thought, oh, this is really good. And it was appointment viewing for me. And I would probably say like the last 5 or 6 years, I really haven't paid much attention to it, but maybe this other one was enough to bring me back. Ben Axelrod is our guest, a senior editor at Awful Announcing here on 1310 WDPN. Um, I see where Peacock is rising the prices for their streaming services here, coincidentally or not, right before the college football season starts. NBC is going to be taking over the NBA. Your take on that, and I imagine probably not surprised at what the companies do right before they're about to display some new programming and they want to get some more revenue in the barn.
Yeah, I think the key there is probably the NBA deal, especially because you are going to have games that are exclusive to Peacock. I know they have that for college football too, but it's that they've had that for a few years. But I think to add another premium product like the NBA kind of gives them incentive to up those prices. And I mean that's ultimately how this all works is one of the big negotiations going on right now is the UFC rights deal, and a lot of people expect that they'll end up with Netflix. And while Netflix might not necessarily charge, an additional charge for a pay-per-view the way you pay $60 a month now for a UFC pay-per-view,
Mm-hmm.
it's ultimately going to be reflected in the price that you're paying for your Netflix subscription each month. So, yeah, I mean, it's the cost of doing business. And as we see streamers and get more and more inventory in terms of sports rights, then it's ultimately going to be hitting us in the wallet. So that's show business, and that's the way these things are going to go.
I'm pretty sure it was Awful Announcing. I almost guarantee it was. I read an article, may have been 7-10 days ago, about what the NFL rights fees and how that's all going to play out maybe by 2028, 2030 with different networks and a whole lot of moving parts there. How do you think that will look 5, 7 years down the road? Are we lucky? Are we going to be lucky enough to still be able to flip on our TV at 1 o'clock and say, "Oh, there's the Fox game. Oh, there's the CBS game," or is it going to be the wild, wild west by then?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll always be able to watch the Browns on local TV. That's the thing is even now when the Browns are on, Thursday Night Football, which is exclusive to Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
there's still a deal in place where they'll air over on one of the local channels. So I don't think that's a concern. But as far as watching the rest of the league, it's going to look a lot different, and that's the NFL has the ability to opt out of its deal. I believe after the 2029 season, when you just look at the deal the NBA got, all indications are they will definitely do that. And then you look at the way that the league has been negotiating its deals and the way that they've been carving out pieces of its current package to give Netflix the Christmas games or give YouTube a opening week game or Peacock an opening week game. The streamers are going to be involved, and I think there's already been interest from Netflix in potentially obtaining a part of a bigger piece of the NFL package. Obviously, we know Amazon is already involved. Google with YouTube is getting involved, and so the idea of, like, let's say the Fox package moving over to Netflix or the CBS package moving over to YouTube, that's not all that crazy looking 5 years down the road. So I do think that, just as we move away from the traditional cable bundle and as we move towards a more streaming friendly media ecosystem, I do think that's probably going to be a reality of all this. But I also do think the NFL, they know where their bread is buttered in terms of the local fan bases, and we will always have the option to have an antenna and watch the Browns over a local broadcast. I can't imagine that going away.
Well, and that aside, and I'm almost afraid to ask this next question. I'm glad you mentioned that about the antenna and the local angle. Is it just, I'm not going to say a matter of time, but how far away are we, Ben, to where the NFL is strictly going to be pay-per-view for everything?
I don't know. I think that's probably more of a question about what happens with the cable bundle and whether it remains viable. But, I mean, you look, and right now the NFL has a deal with Fox, a deal with NBC, a deal with CBS, a deal with Amazon, and then it's carved out pieces for Google and for Netflix as well. So that's right there. That's 5 or 6 partners. And, it's going to be interesting. ESPN is launching a direct-to-consumer app later this year, which is going to give you the ability, even without a cable subscription, to get ESPN. And I think that could be a really big domino to fall, because I know a lot of people who only have cable right now because it gives them access to ESPN. So, I think in some ways we're already at that point where everything is kind of pay-per-view, and it might just be a little bit more formalized, but we're already at a point where if you want to watch the NFL on a weekly basis, you have to subscribe to a cable package as well as at least 2 or 3 streaming services throughout the year.
Senior editor at Awful Announcing, Ben Axelrod, is our guest here on the Sam Bourquin Show. Well, Browns camp, the rookies filtering in today. Well, almost all of them. And then we'll get ready to roll beginning next Tuesday up in Berea. Everybody should be there. What's your take on what could be for the 2025 Cleveland Browns? Again, never a dull moment. Lots of ancillary things going on in and around the organization. But what do you see as we sit here on this Friday afternoon?
Yeah, I really have low expectations for the Browns this season, to be honest with you. It's not often you enter camp with a 4 quarterback race for who could be your starting quarterback. And, I think it's really, even just looking at the mini camp, it really created kind of a disjointed experience and really just kind of a chaotic experience. So I'm interested to see how that translates into training camp and how they go about choosing who this starting quarterback is going to be. And then, we don't know how this quarterback thing is going to shake out right now. You could probably talk me into any of Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, or Dylan Gabriel winning the job. And even, I don't think it's that crazy to think Shedeur Sanders could win the job, although I think he probably has the tallest hill to climb, just being a 5th round pick with a quarterback who was selected ahead of him. But regardless of who wins the job, you have to think the Browns are going to have a bottom five, bottom three quarterback in the NFL entering the season. So it's a quarterback league, and that's where I look at the Browns. I think they have a lot of concerns at the skill positions, especially with Kinshawn Junkins' legal situation playing out. So I really just have low expectations for this Brown season, and it's going to be interesting because I think the Browns have said all the right things about Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, but ultimately coming off of a 3-14 season, and then to look at what will likely be another losing season. They have the lowest projected win total in the NFL. It's going to be really interesting to see how ownership handles that, if that's ultimately how this plays out.
Well, I keep going back and forth. I've got him at 3-14 or 4-13, and I think that's just where I'm at. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to go with the 3 or 4 win total. You mentioned the Quinshawn Judkins situation. Crazy. I mean, I listened to the 911 call yesterday morning. I read a few more reports on it. How do you think this will play out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it will play out, but it doesn't look good, obviously. And I think the fact that he's not signed currently with the Browns does give them a little bit more leeway than usual to just sit back and wait and see how it plays out. They went through this last year with Mike Hall, who wound up facing a suspension from the NFL, and so they're well versed, unfortunately, in dealing with these situations, both in terms of what to expect from a legal standpoint and what to expect from the league's investigation. Now, obviously, no two situations are the same, and this could very well play out differently, and you never know what might come out on either side here. But this is not a situation that is good for anybody involved. This is not something that you want to see from a guy you were counting on. You don't want to see it from anyone, obviously, but you also, from a football standpoint, you don't want to see it from somebody you were counting on to be, a primary piece of this offense moving forward. So ugly situation, obviously, and something that the Browns are going to have to deal with. And like I said, unfortunately, a situation that they've become a little too well versed in when it comes to waiting on these things and dealing with league investigations and criminal investigations.
All right, Ben, it's a fill in the blank Friday here on the show. Here we go. You would like blank to play you in a movie about your life.
Oh, man. That's a good one. I'm just going to go with Ben Affleck. I've
okay, all right.
All right. Yeah, we have the same first name, same initials, so I'll go with Ben Affleck. He was the first name that came to mind. It would have to be years down the road, obviously.
Hey, they always say go with your gut. That's the first name that came. That's who you want to go with. Ben Axelrod, senior editor at Awful Announcing. Check him out on X. Ben, as always, appreciate the time and have a great weekend.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Ben Axelrod, our guest here on the Sam Bourquin Show, AM 1310 WDP.